Yeah.
It's actually the yeah, okay, the consonants. What so narrow vowels versus modified vowels. Take on it is one is not necessarily better than the other one. They're just different. And when you would want to modify a vowel would be based on your artistic choice, what your gender is, where you are in your range, obviously, what note you're coming from, what note you're going into. There's a lot of factors involved in whether or not your strength, your ability, your experience, on whether or not you want to modify or not. But given your question, Piran, which is, do you prefer to modify? I think I would most of the time as well. Couple things. The first thing that comes to my mind in my own personal experience is physical strength, motor skills, practicing, and physical strength. As James pointed out, it takes years. It took him years, apparently. I don't believe it has to take years, but certainly will take a lot of concentrated work and practicing and training to build the strength and the motor skills to maintain connectivity, to maintain glottal compression, vocal closure, and a high closed quotient, which means a lot of surface area on the vocal folds, right, which is a big part of sounding chesty, high. When you go to narrowed vowels and diphthongs, okay, and R controlled vowels, I, R, E, U, R, E, R, when you go to ishness, E and U, it puts a tug, a strain on that musculature that's giving you stability. We might call it belt musculature. You might refer to it as a TA dominant position. TA is not the only muscle, but it's maybe the most important in anchoring that chesty voice high above the bridge. So, I mean, that's a little bit of information on kind of what's going on at level. But to learn to do it, be prepared to practice and commit and stay on it for a long time. Now, a training methodology or technique for that I do a lot for myself when I want to fix a narrow position or for my students is to find the note, the note that you're working on, and the frequency. Get to a keyboard. Okay, so like a G. Slowly sing the part, but slow it down. For most tunes, for most hard parts, if you train them at the normal tempo, at the normal speed, it seems like the body struggles to learn the motor skills, to be able to articulate it. If you simply slow down, maintain the beltiness, maintain the chestiness, maintain the compression, sing the melodic part. Let's just say the melody is sort of, hovering around an F, G, and A. Do the whole thing exactly the same, but slow it down. Gotcha, like learning to do a guitar scale. I mean, I'm pretty sure about this. James can correct me if I'm off, but if you're going to get really good and clean on scales and things, you start by practicing them slow. So it's a strength building position issue, and it's a motor skills issue. And I've found if you just work on it really slow, articulate each part of the lyric, and you work on those parts, then.
Yeah, because I found I was the anti-modification guy, but when it came to some of these songs, I started having to look at my lyrics and pinpoint exactly where I was choking. So that's probably it. Probably the strength. So yeah, I'll just keep practicing.
Well,
So I'll just keep
it takes strength, coordination, motor skills. I know you practice, Kieran. I know you work on it, but the question or the answer may be kind of sort of like how you're going about it. Um, and that's my good advice. Is just slow down the motor skills.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
And just to kind of
Yeah, and James, by the way, there's a take a look at your at the text messaging, okay? Kieran, is that helpful?
That is helpful. Thank you.
and
You're
one
welcome,
thing I
buddy.
did want to say, I think my experience with it taking so long would have been a lot quicker if I would have. I don't know, it's like I got on a good path when I first started studying, and then I went off and tried to do all this other stuff, and I think that I ended up coming back to like what I had originally learned, and that if I would have just stayed on the path, it probably would have been a lot quicker because I just was trying to, I don't know, I was weirding out. I was just trying to figure out all this stuff, and I was almost like, I was going to so many different voice teachers and reading so many books, and I don't know if in a weird way that I feel like that kind of slowed my progress down. I don't know. It could have been quicker maybe. If I would have just been like, okay, here's the path. I'm just gonna stay on this path instead of like, oh, but what about that? What about this? A lot of flip flopping that I did. Um, and there was when I was studying in the '80s in LA. I mean, that was the place to take lessons. I mean, there was so many great coaches, and there was the Seth Riggs and the Ron Andersons and the Elizabeth Sabines. There was all these different coaches, and I studied with everybody. You know what I mean? To kind of get a sense of what I wanted to do, and I don't know. It was sometimes I think about maybe I would have been better if I would have just stayed simpler. I don't know, but that's just me. But I think you're doing better, and I'll check out those new vocal tracks. And the thing with you too, Kieran, because I know you and I know your voice. You have that thing where you like to sing at the edge of your range because that's your rocker. I mean, it's the Bono, Soundgarden. All those guys always sung at the top of their range, and I think that apart from technique wise, a thing that can help you with that is just start to sing in a band. Just having to sing in that range at the intensity of being in front of a band, 2 or 3 rehearsals a week, week in and week out, man. I'm telling you, nothing takes the place of that, man. There's nothing like, it's like nothing like throwing a kid in the deep end of the pool to teach him how to frickin' swim. I think that could be something that could be the next step for you is to get a band, even if it's just like any band. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't have to be the greatest musicians. It can be a cover band. It doesn't really matter. Just start putting yourself on the line, get the guitar and sing the tunes. And if it's covers or originals, it doesn't matter. Just singing.
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's another version of building the motor skills and the coordination to maintain those narrowed positions when you're singing. You can get clinical about it, like I explained, and kind of in a training environment. That's going to help. But I totally agree. Another version of that, of getting motor skills, just get out and do it. Just sing.
Well, that's always the question with people. A lot of people are like, well, a lot of my favorite singers never took lessons. Was Robert Plant just born with that voice, or was Chris Cornell just born with that voice, or whoever their idol is that didn't really study? And I think a lot of them just got in bands as kids, and they just found their way that way, and then that was their way that they found their technique. because just because somebody doesn't train doesn't mean that they're void of technique. They found their way. Singing with a band can be very good. It can also tear your voice up. So you gotta be careful, not to overshoot yourself. You know what I mean? I remember when I first started singing, and I realized I had a pretty cool voice, but I would be singing with a band, and I'd be okay, and then they'd want to do like Welcome to the Jungle, and then like all this High Zeppelin, and after 3 or 4 songs, man, I was shot. It was just outside of what I could really do. Like I could do the Bad Company, and I could do that stuff, but man, when you got into that Sweet Child of Mine and all that high screamy stuff, it was too much. But at that point, it was like little by little. I mean, this is just for me. I went through phases of kind of blowing my voice out, learning a few things, taking lessons, change this, change that, and before you knew it, I could sing. I mean, at one point I was on the road for 26 months straight in a cover band, and I mean, we were doing everything from like Iron Maiden to frickin' Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I was able to, survive it, and I made it home in one piece, and I could still sing. It was very demanding, and it forced me to, just kind of, it forced my body to adapt. You know what I mean? It's like the difference between like training to be a fighter and getting in a fight. It's a different thing. So I think that if you can get a little band thing going on, or even go out and sing karaoke or do a duo with somebody, just so that you're making music and it's not just about what I can't do, what's wrong with what do I need to fix in my voice, and scales and arpeggios. If all that is, if that's all you're doing, you can really put yourself into a quandary that doesn't. It's like a pit that doesn't have a way out. Because sometimes it's just best just to get out there and have fun, get with your buddies, you know, play Kiss songs. It doesn't matter. Just get out there and sing.
And it's singing songs in a way is kind of like another set of workouts. It's a
Yeah.
whole new it's a whole new puzzle of phonetics, consonants and vowels and intervals and leaps and different and resonance and different things going on coming at you hard and strong and fast. Well,
Right.
if you're doing that every single night or several nights a week, well, you better catch up. Your body will, and it's not training, but metaphorically you can view it as just another set of really hard workouts. The more I do this, the more I kind of appreciate that approach, that lesson for all of us, which is get out and do it.
Your voice sounded awesome on that Iron Maiden tune.
Oh,
Whatever that last song you recorded. Man, I mean, and it's good for all of us. I mean, we're all students of this stuff. We all want to get better. We all want to see each other get better. And I've seen, just from the years I've seen you doing your recordings, your voice just keeps getting better every time. So, this stuff works.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the compliment. But my voice has gotten stronger, a hell of a lot stronger. I'm a much better singer than I was several years ago because of the training techniques. So we stop to take a moment to appreciate that the training and the techniques also help. You need both, really. If you can have both, take both.
Yeah.
Train, get under the hood, get surgical, understand it, feel it, and then go out, apply it.
A thing I used to do when I was coming up, I started singing kind of late in life, in my early 20s. I was a guitar player all my life, and then I got exposed to singing, and I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. I just can't do it, but I'll figure it out. And I started singing at a karaoke bar. It was before anybody knew karaoke. This is 1986 in Hollywood. In Burbank, it just closed. It's called Dimples, and it was a karaoke bar. And I went there every night. I mean, that was my hang. And I would go there, and I would sing Purple Rain or, Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon, whatever my tunes I was going to do. But leading up to that night, I treated it like it was a concert. I warmed up at the house. You know, I do stretches and yoga and push-ups. I would be doing all my scales and arpeggios, and I'd be, you know, taking the hot shower and cleansing out and getting all this going on. I'd go to the show. I'd sign up. They'd be like, it's going to be about 45 minutes. I would go into the back. There was a back area where they used to banquet food, and there was nobody back there, and I would be back there doing my stretches and my lip rolls with, you know, the old Walkman days. And I would go out there, and I was playing for 25 drunk people singing covers, but I went at it with the exact same intensity as if I was at a football stadium. It didn't, there was, that was what my dad taught me. My dad says, you never do it differently. You don't, you know, if there's two people there, you sing as though you're at a stadium. It never changes. And I think that if you treat everything you do with singing with that kind of like love and importance, then all of a sudden all those things will flourish more. So and the reason I'm saying this is you may start out by going, all right, I'm going to try what these guys are saying. I'm going to go sing Tuesday nights at this Mexican restaurant doing karaoke. Well, you're on tour with Van Halen when you do it. It's just that same mindset. Set the whole thing up, do your warm up, go through the procedure. So it's almost like you're making the myth. You're acting as though, and then the next thing you know, things start to develop from there because you never know who's sitting in the restaurant.
Speaking of procedures, there's a procedure that I do, or a training routine, and I do with my students as well, that includes nasal buzzing. You've seen it before, Kieran. And then doing plosive onsets and glottal attacks inside of workouts, typically sirens. Now, with the 4 pillars of singing, you can go in deep and do all kinds of stuff. But the super duper simple warm up plan that gets everything going, gets me belting, that I do before I sing, that I did before I did the Iron Maiden tune, was simply nasal buzzing, then beep, beep, plosive onsets on the B at the bottom, pulling up a siren, then off the top, glottal attacks, and take it all the way up to about C5 and back down. Now, there's a demonstration in the 4 pillars of singing in my program that shows you how to do this, a video, and then a file, and a guide file, and everything that you need to train this. Okay? I'm not trying to sell my system necessarily, but what I'm saying is it's a routine that gets results. And plosive onsets and glottal attacks, which are basically onsets on vowels, as far as technique is concerned, other than singing more, which is James's point, as far as technique is concerned, it's helping. It's helped me in my voice more than anything. James, it's glottal attacks, dude. It's plosive onsets and glottal attacks and narrowing and throat shaping the vowels, you know, in and around and above the bridge, that's creating the majority of the strength that you're hearing when I sing these days. So, I mean, that's a plug for training. And do both. I think we need to get on to somebody else's question. Kieran, it's really great to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, man. And I'll hit you up tomorrow, Kieran.
All right, man. Speak to you guys later. I'll join the rest of the guys.
Yeah, cool. Stay with us.
Oh, there he goes. Boom.
Anybody else? Yeah, so let's see. Mansingo, Jason, Ariel, you've been on for a long time. Arvid, any questions?
A bunch of cool names. Mansingo.
Yeah, James, make sure you take a look at the your text message.
I did. I got it.
All right. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, bro. Good luck. Nice try. Nice try. Oh, we got a dog.
We got a dog. Yahoo! That's my buddy.
So, anyone else? Jason. No, thinking about a question. Okay. Mansingo, what Mansingo? Any questions? Arvid. Ariel. Well, what do you got going on today? Until we get another question, what do you got going on today, James?
Whoa.
Other than
What is
this.
today? I guess I got this, and then I got to teach a little tonight. And I think picking the kids up from school, and my wife was out of town for work for a few days, so we're all going to do some hanging tonight. Play a little Xbox.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing too exciting. I got a mix tomorrow. I got a record to mix. And yeah, the same old, same old. I got a show coming up on the 30th. Just kind of dawned on me the other day. I'm like, oh man, I got to get my head back into it. Now, 3 months ago, I broke my hand, which is now working for the most
Whoa.
part. Yeah, so I haven't really started playing guitar yet, but I'm going to start tomorrow. I got my assistant to string up and set up my Martin back there. I don't know if you can see it. And I played a little bit yesterday, and it works. My hands are working. A little stiff, but it'll be okay.
Check out my piano, dude. Got a new piano in here.
Yeah, I saw that in some video the other day. That is awesome.
Dope.
That's a beautiful room to sing in. I can just imagine what that must sound like in there.
Yeah, I'm working. There's a new age. There's a new age pianist here in town. A friend of mine. Her name is Mary Lydia Ryan, and we're working on some songs together, just voice and piano. It's kind of some ambient, pretty singing, not rock, but some lighter mass stuff. We're gonna do like a little show here in the studio, and then
do you play well, or are you a clunker like me?
No, no, no. I don't play. I don't play. I'm singing. She's gonna play. I'm gonna sing. And
do you play piano in your lessons?
I don't. I play a keyboard. I cue my students with a keyboard, intervals, and notes for onsets, and then, as you know, the Four Pillars of Singing has recorded content.
Right.
So we just pipe that off the program through the PA system. So students have microphone and then train off the recorded content from the program. But I do have a keyboard here. My keyboard. But no, it's not like I'm ripping into
Yeah.
jams or anything. See here, New Age. Well, Arvid, yeah, the science behind the glottal attacks. Is there anything I can read about this stuff? Where did you get this information? Where'd you get this information? How do we know it's legit? What do doctors say about this? Yeah, the science behind the glottal attacks. Is there anywhere I can read about this stuff? You can read about it in my book in the coursework, and you can read about it in this book. This book. And this book, and surely all this one too. For science of singing and glottal attacks, Arvid.
Did you learn a lot of this stuff through that teacher that you studied with or you worked under?
Maestro Kyle? No, not glottal attacks. Maestro Kyle,
Did he
warming
die?
up, bridging the passaggio, a lot of the workouts. The intent, the goal was the same, that you and me try to take our students, but the understanding and knowledge of the science of the voice and trying to apply that to technique, Maestro Kyle wasn't your guy for that necessarily. He's from a different era. Structure of Singing by Richard Miller talks about onsets and glottal attacks. Glottal attacks are an onset. It's one form of an onset. Vocal Health and Pedagogy by Robert Sadeloff. He's the founder of the Voice Foundation, which I'm a member of. Catherine Sadelin's Complete Vocal Technique. She has onsets and glottal attacks in here as well. And there's more. It's well written. So I don't know if that's a
You're like the doctor of singing, man. You know a lot of stuff, man. It's good to know you.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Stuff. Where did you get this information? How do I know it's legit? The reason we know it's legit, Arvid, is it's been discussed and researched and written about, and I practice it every day, and that's how we know it's legit. Do you have a question, Arvid? Do you have a question about your singing? No? Okay. Mansingo. Yes. It's only a small. Mansingo says amazing collection book. Yes. Let's see, let's get another question in here. Mansingo, Lugo, Fib, Xbox. Mansingo wants to know what your favorite Xbox game is.
I don't know, man. You know, my kids are 5 and 7, so it's Legos, Lego Star Wars, Lego Batman, Lego Avengers, the Lego Movie. A lot of Lego. We got Minecraft, but you know they're fun. It's a little too. It's a little too heady for them. They want to like it, but it doesn't really happen. Then we have this other one called Raymond. It's like a dragon one, and it's pretty cool, except uh, it's not a cartoon that they watch all the time. I think my wife just bought another one. Some new one just came out last week. Yeah, we become Xboxers. Like my kids are pretty good at it. Not me. Even when I was a kid, I wasn't into that. I was a rock and roller. I didn't have time for video games.
You know, do we have any more questions? You guys, don't be shy. Otherwise, James and I are going to shoot the shit here. James, I have a question for you. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but just so that we can, have an educational experience with these guys that have taken the time. In regards to the narrowed vowels, I mean, that's a really great question, actually, that Kieran had. What would you do? And I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm just honestly just trying to ask you to get another perspective. What would you do from the training perspective to help somebody on getting stronger, more consistent on narrowing the vowels? Is there something that comes to mind that you might?
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't really. Like I said, I don't think of it like that. That's why it's always foreign to me to talk about it in these terms. I don't really necessarily think about it. I think of for me, I think of ah is open, eh is more narrow, ah is more narrow, and it kind of shrinks down. Um, I utilize the narrower vowels from my perspective of it to help the singer to start to learn to sing higher. So a lot of times guys will struggle to go up with ah because they're going to want to flail it. Yeah, they're going to do that up and out thing, or the out of the mouth, or the pulling chest, or whatever you want to call it. Where the as, they're able to kind of keep it in just a little bit. And then once they can get it in, then they can go a little more cylindrical, which is the sound I like. I like the voice to sound the same from top to bottom. It's just my thing. So, but usually I'll start by pushing them in a little bit, and then if they fight it, I make them push it in even more. I force them, almost like I tell them to swing the pendulum the other way. So if their voice is super brassy and wide on top, and then they're wondering why they can't hit anything, we do like yes and ohs. You know, we tighten it and move it in, up and in like a steeple slightly. Almost, you can almost go a little covered, a little like phony baloney sounding if you have to, just to get them to start to move out of that flaily, wider thing on the top. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. If left unchecked, left untrained, singers will splat and get wide and splatty and really at-ish on the higher notes. And it tends to be where the body wants to go as a default. Oftentimes, it wants to go
Well,
into
I
a
think it's a natural. I think it's our natural sound, because
yeah.
remember something. Those splatty sounds, the human ear hears more acutely. It's natural. So if my dog was to run across the street and a car was coming, I wouldn't go, "Hey, stop!" I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, "Hey!" It would brighten because I knew that that would have more attack on his ear. That's natural. I think it's very natural. But over time, it can blow a singer's voice out if it's too bright and too khaki, too wide on top. So you find a nice balance where they can kind of vacillate, you know. And that's why I think it's nice if you kind of work the spectrum so that they can modulate. They don't have to just sing it one way. You know, they don't have to like I remember back in the day, they used to, I had a song and the hook was just na 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 and
Hang
it was
on,
na na
hang on,
na. Oh,
hey, hang on, real quick, James. I do want to hear this, but it'll add context to the listeners. Manny Mansingu is asking how narrow vowels. I don't know if the question is how to do a narrow vowel, or if the question is what are the narrow vowels. Um, but um, uh, regardless, guys, we're typically talking about e, u, and what they're called, they're referred to as the R controlled vowels. I R E R U R A R, er, er, er. Those guys will grab you. So the R controlled sound colors, the E-ishness and U-ishness. James, sorry for an interruption. You were saying.
I always when people talk about that, I always think I was an Elton John fan. He used to sing Wonderful. He never said Wonderful. He never sang it. He never did the because the always sounded like kind of congested and funky. He was Wonderful.
Well, you know what? I think just in general terms, is not a beautiful color.
Yeah.
It's not a beautiful color, and that would be one reason to modify from time to time, because a more open vowel can be more lovely and more beautiful to hear.
Or like singing the front end of the diphthong, like the country guys are. Um, I don't want you to take away. And they sit on the back end of the E, where it's a rock out. You take away, and just maybe click the E at the end just so you can hear the word. But you wouldn't go take away with just a not. So that's how they sing out here in Nashville. Every time I hear it sing like that, I chuckle because I'm like, we avoided that like the plague. Like
Oh
that was
yeah,
like you
I
never
totally.
see
Well,
like
that's singing the diphthong.
yeah.
Way. So in the word way, the little e-ishness at the end is in fact the diphthong.
Right,
The
the
open
E.
vowel way is not the diphthong. So they're singing the diphthong,
Yeah.
and so that's a very interesting point. It makes for kind of a stylistic thing, doesn't it?
It's stylistic because it's popular. It's not as popular now in country because a lot of the new country they all sing like L.A. rockers from the '80s, but they don't talk to me. They talk to meh. Everything's eh. You talk to meh. It's like
Mhm.
wanted. I don't know. It's always that eh sound was really popular, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah. What was it? Isn't Bon Jovi singing "Wanted, Wanted,
Yeah,
Dead
it's
or
all
Alive"?
it's
Is
all,
it
all kind of ehs.
Wanted, Dead or Alive"? I don't think so.
Yeah, they just
James Bree from Dream Theater, modifying all the time. There's this sense of, I think it's important to train and be able to sing through the narrowed positions for sure. But sometimes it seems that people want to avoid the narrowed positions like exclusively, and I think that's a dangerous position to get into, because sometimes you don't want to sound like a country singer. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you're going to choke if you don't. And so it's better to have an kind of an open mind about it, that both are good options. It just depends on when and how you're using it.
Well, yeah, and that's why I was saying it's nice to kind of train the spectrum of the voice so that you can do different things. You don't always have to just sing it one way. I think too that the fact that rock came out of a non-educated, it's a non-educated form of music, blues and rock. I mean, it came from, it's poor kids trying to get out of the ghetto. They weren't going to conservatory. They don't know anything about freaking, vocals or anything. They just know that they don't want to go to jail and have 9 kids by the time they're 20. So they're just going for the rock thing. That's where it started. So because of that, they had all these ghetto ways of doing things, which actually became a part of the sound, which is like why you always, some of the greatest rock musicians are kind of like, kind of the discombobulated players. Look at Slash, look at Jimmy Page. I mean, these are people that were like not necessarily virtuosos in a sense of playing wise, but they had that grease. They had that gnarly. They just looked like they came from the streets. They played like they didn't play like Al Di Meola, like because kids that like rock, they listen to Al Di Meola. That doesn't sound cool to them. You know what I mean? Like kids want to hear Chester from Linkin Park, or they love freaking Dave Grohl. Like they want people that kind of sound ghetto and street. Seems like it to me. I know as a producer, you know, you,
Yeah.
you are constantly having to live in reality. You cannot live in the fantasy of what you think the world should be and what singing should be, because that's not what singing always is. And I'm always brought back to the especially now in Nashville, because it's all about Chris Stapleton and Margot Price and Maren Martin and all these, all this like alternative rock country. It's all very
Yeah.
street sounding.
You
It's
know,
not it's not cultured. It doesn't sound super sophisticated. The singing is not sophisticated. Because
street is the word that comes to mind. As a producer, you're responsible for producing a product that the common listener is going to dig, and so you have to have your ears. You have to have kind of your street savvy ears on. I would think probably depends on the artist and who the target is, but I can imagine you're trying to get something that would have mass appeal, right? So oftentimes that probably means a vocal color and approach that is a little bit less refined, leaning away from the perfectly tuned format, right? I mean, something that's kind of just gritty. Sometimes it sounds better in rock and roll. It often does.
yeah, a lot of times it does sound better. Sometimes being your voice being too cultivated can sound disingenuous on record to me. It can just sometimes just sound like too much. Like I don't know. It's just my heroes weren't like that. So when I grew up on Led Zeppelin and Van Halen, and you know what I mean. Like I grew up on rock and roll and Kiss, and I didn't. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. Also, I mean, being an artist, if you're evolving, you've got to always be listening to what's going on. Like right now in country, the big thing is not slick. It's where 10 years ago in Nashville everything was slick.
Buddy, we got some good questions here. Let's see. Arvid, Robert, hyperglottal compression that Ken does. Well, I don't know if that's exactly what our friend Ken, is doing, but for the sake of the conversation, your question, let's just assume that it is, but I don't want to make us go on record saying that's what Ken does. Do you think that is distortion made in the true folds? I did an ENT check and did hyperglottal compression and saw myself, the false folds were activated. If Ken's hyperglottal compression, the distortion that he's getting from that, in my opinion, is false vocal fold. That's ventricular fold activation. So he's getting a lot of compression on his vocal folds, but the cool distortion that we hear can do sometimes. In my opinion, I don't know for a fact, I know absolutely, but in my opinion, it's ventricular folds. It's false vocal folds flapping in the upper vocal tract, creating noise and therefore getting distortion. That would be a healthier way of producing distortion as opposed to grinding the true folds. Do you have an opinion on that, James? When you hear Ken sing, do you think it's true fold grinding or false fold flapping?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know how he sings. I mean, I've only heard him.
It's a hard question to answer. It's an educated guess for me.
Probably better to ask.
Yeah. One thing about Ken, he sounds great, but man, there's a lot of push going on there. With all due respect to my friend Ken, a lot of people are never going to be able to sing like that. He's got vocal folds made of titanium. What about transgender singing modification? That's a great question. Transgender.
Is that like somebody going from a male to a female?
Yeah, Mansingo claims to say it's a sex change from a man to a woman, and so you teach transgender on YouTube. I do some transgender voice therapy work for.
I didn't even know that existed.
What's that?
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah. This book is totally about it.
That's crazy.
And I've read most of this book. All of these people that are training people how to speak in a new gender are from Seattle.
That's crazy.
So it's kind of a big thing in Seattle. What I've done is I've taken the onsets and some of the techniques that I developed in the 4 pillars of singing and have applied it to transgender voice therapy clients, and have come up with a methodology that's unique from a voice coach perspective that has helped people learn how to change their gender in their speaking pattern. I don't know if that's really modification. I see you teach transgendering. Is that narrow position? Not really, no, because with transgender voice therapy, we're talking about speech mode, not singing. And when we're talking about speech mode, we're talking about the physiology and the acoustics, the phonetics and the physiology happening at lower frequencies. And near where we speak on lower frequencies, generally speaking. And when you're speaking at lower frequencies, you're generally not.
Your alarm went off.
I know, I got in a phone call. The lower the frequency, the less the requirement to narrow. Okay, the higher the frequency, the greater the need to narrow and have conversations like we've had today with James.
It's the space the air has to go through gets narrower.
Yeah, the lower the frequency, the closer you are to speech mode, the more intuitive and kind of, in a way, kind of the easier things are. The higher you go in frequency, it's interesting to notice that the more complicated things get. The more we have to narrow, the more we have to worry about vowels, the more things start choking and pushing or sounding more amazing. Transgender is speech therapy, so it's all speech mode, so there's really not a lot of discussion about narrowing. There's a lot of discussion about resonance. There's discussion about vocal fold compression. If I'm teaching somebody how to speak more like a woman, we might add a little more wind in the sound color, for example, and other things that are quite interesting but have nothing to do with singing. Let's see here. What about Jason Morrison Sinatra taught me everything. Mensingo, be careful. I heard utilize his lawyer. Is this true? I heard that Ken has I suppose Ken has a lawyer, so do I. And Ken's a good friend of mine, and I really don't know what your point is. Arvid, but does even grinding true folds really create distortion? Does true folds really make distorted sounds? Does grinding true folds really create distortion? You can create distortion by grinding the true folds if you want to, but it's not healthy. That's why discussions about vocal distortion, singing with distortion, tend to talk a lot about the ventricular folds, the false folds, because when you create distortion by activating the false vocal folds, it's healthier than grinding on the true folds. Okay, so I don't know, James, are you dying to say something? We know these guys in here.
I was just listening. You know, I'm still thinking about making a girl sound like a guy.
I do help people with this, but I'm not very good at speaking like a woman. I don't actually. I tried a couple times, but it's you know, you go to falsetto and it takes a lot of practice.
The guy comes into me and wants voice lessons. He's like, hey, I want to sound like a girl. I'm like, oh, be unreasonable.
Hey, the thing is it takes a lot of practice. You have to, if you're one of these people, you have to practice it, and it's not something I practice, so I'm very good at it. But the onsets and the vowels and the resonance work that I do with them is helpful. Any other questions, guys? Hey, it's been fun having you here, and really appreciate you guys coming. I hope this was helpful for you.
Yeah, we did an hour. It was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And
it got better. It was a little funky at first. When Kieran was on at first, it was very like it's better with just the two of us. It seemed like like the bandwidth couldn't handle the three that well or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But good. Well, this was fun, Mr. Robert Lunte. Thanks for including me in this.
You're welcome. Thank you, James, for joining with me and being just a great friend through the years. Yeah, and we'll continue to do these, guys. I will probably promote them out at the Modern Vocalist World. So go to themodernvocalistworld.com and register. James and I are regular members out there, and so you can have discussions about vocal technique or have your singing reviewed. There's articles and other things to do that are very informative for singers, and you are all invited to participate. And we'll do this again in the future. I'm going to send, James and I will both send an email out to those of you that participated and give you a little rebate or discount on one of our services, and as a way to thank you for coming. And with that, anything you'd like to leave our friends with, James?
No, it's just been fun, man. It's a good way to spend a Thursday afternoon talking about singing. I always learn stuff, you know. But yeah, it's fun, man. Sing, have fun, enjoy yourself when you sing. Sing with passion, you know. One thing I did learn from years of being a voice coach on American Idol is some of the best singers didn't know much about singing. So you know, like my coach Nate Lamb used to say, you know, he's like, you don't have to be a mechanic to own a car. You just need to know how to drive it. So just do your best to learn what you can, but you don't have to, you know, get overwhelmed if that's not your trip. Because like I said, I mean, Robert's been more successful at getting deeper into it. With me, the deeper I got into it, the more I got confused. So there's two different people that had found success with two different ways of approaching it. So there's, you know, there's many ways to skin a cat, and just keep searching. And if you're on here, obviously you're on the path. And, you know, I think that, you know, I know there's a lot of people out there, you know, making fun of voice coaches or whatever, and, you know, negative things about him or whatever, or this guy or that guy. And, you know, I mean, I think that we all have something to offer, and I just think that you can learn from everybody, man.
Well, thank you, James. With that, I think we'll probably call it.
All right, man. Thanks so much, Robert.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, we're going to give away a microphone to one of the participants, and we'll let you guys know. We'll probably announce it out of the forum.
All right, man.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.